So if you've been playing guitar for a while, you probably went through a phase where you thought every guitar needs a floating bridge and a sustainer pickup and a bunch of push-pull pots and switches to get all of your 300 different tones. And this time probably correlated with thinking that playing fast was the most important thing about the guitar. And if you're still in any of those phases, enjoy it, it's super fun. But if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll prove these two things to you. The PRS Santana SE guitar is one of the most underrated instruments in the PRS line, and that's fitting because Carlos Santana is one of the most underrated famous guitarists. Welcome back to The Experiment, the series where I explore a single gear category in extreme detail over an extended period of time. This season is sponsored by PRS. Check out video 1 link below for more info on the sponsorship. And all of the guitars in the series are also linked below in the SE Experiment Sweetwater list. Now we have a lot to talk about in terms of this guitar's electronics and layout in particular. But if you watch The Experiment, you know we like to start from the headstock and work our way down, so let's do that. Like the rest of the SE line, we have non-locking tuners and a composite nut. And important for guitars with tremolos, we also have straight string pull from the tuners to the nut, which helps with the really good tuning stability on this guitar, but more on that later. Something else I really like about the PRS signature guitars is that you only see the artist's name one spot on the instrument, and that is on the truss rod cover. There's nothing crazy or over the top that screams this is a Carlos Santana guitar. And if you really wanted to, you could of course just change out the truss rod cover for literally pennies. And if you're familiar with PRS guitars, the neck is also going to be fairly normal. We have the wide fat profile, which I personally find very comfortable, but if you're used to the standard modern C that most other big companies use, this is definitely going to feel chunky to you. Then we have a rosewood fingerboard with of course the PRS bird inlays, and we have a gloss finish on the back of the neck as well, which again is common on the SE line. Now, something that's a little bit unique about this guitar is that we have 24 frets, which isn't found on every single SE guitar. And these frets were, of course, leveled perfectly, and there is not a single sharp fret edge anywhere on this instrument. And I know there's going to be a few of you who are getting skeptical because I keep saying that the fretwork and QC on these guitars is amazing, but if you don't believe me, just go to any big box store, pick up one of these guitars or any other SE guitar, and I'm pretty sure what I'm saying is going to be confirmed for you in person. Give it a try if you don't believe me. And then we of course have a 24.5 inch scale length. Now on my Patreon link below, we talk about all of these guitars in even more detail, and I do Q&As and custom lessons and so on. And one question I got about this guitar is whether or not the 24.5 inch scale length is going to make the upper frets feel less comfortable. For those of you who don't know, as your scale length gets smaller, so going from 25.5 to 25 or 25 to 24.5 as it gets smaller, the spacing between the frets gets closer together. That should mean that as you get higher on the fretboard, things are a bit more cramped. Now, although that is theoretically true, I have not had any issues with this guitar at the upper frets whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure that's because they have these really big, comfortable frets. By comparison, I often talk about my VGA Sean Lane Excalibur guitar. Amazing guitar, but I find that on this guitar in particular, once I get above the 12th or 13th fret, my hands feel really, really cramped. And this guitar has a 25 inch scale length, so you would assume that 24.5 would be even more cramped. The main difference between these two guitars in terms of the upper fret comfort is that this guitar has very narrow frets. And I think that's what's actually contributing to the more difficult playability in the upper frets, whereas this guitar has fairly large jumbo frets, and so I have no discomfort in the upper frets. And then of course, with the upper horn, we have a bit of a cutaway on the top and the front, which means that as you get to this high position, it's going to comfortably conform to your left hand. So you shouldn't have any issues getting all the way up to 24. And again, it just fits there very nicely with that contouring on the front of the instrument. Now, when you look at this body in comparison to some of the other PRS SE guitars, you'll notice that the design is slightly different. On other PRS guitars, for example, the McCarthy, the upper horn is a bit longer than the lower horn. But by comparison, on the Santana, the upper horn and the lower horn look pretty much the same. And this is mostly a visual thing, but it does play a role in how this guitar feels on your body, especially when standing and using a strap. I noticed that this guitar has a tendency to kind of shift to the left ever so slightly if you use the same exact strap and you don't adjust it. I personally found that if I just make this strap a little bit longer as compared to on a different guitar, it just kind of goes back to the way you might expect a guitar to hang on the neck. So long story short, although it looks different, you can totally get it to feel as comfortable as any other PRS guitar. At least I was totally able to. I also noticed that the contouring on the McCarthy and other PRS guitars is a bit more dramatic on the back than the Santana guitar. But again, I didn't notice any discomfort when playing this guitar. It just feels a little bit different. So you'll definitely want to get one and try a few of these to figure out which one is going to be the best one for you. By the way, if you ever have a question about the gear that I use in these videos, for example, this strap that I was just talking about, I have a list below you can check out with all of my most used gear. And I also have a bit of a description for each item that explains why I use it and when I use it and so on. So you can check that out, link below. Okay, so now we need to get to the main attraction for this guitar, and that's the body, the hardware, the electronics, and so on. But I'm going to start with the only negative comment I have about this instrument. When I did the McCarthy review, I mentioned that the McCarthy is the most beautiful guitar, and as beautiful as it looks on camera, it looks even better in person in my opinion. For me, the SC Santana is a bit of the opposite. I love the way it looks on camera, but I'm not a huge fan of how it looks in person, at least not for me personally. In some light, it actually looks like a darker yellow, and when it looks like that, I really like the way it looks. But then in other light, it looks like a very bright yellow, and when it looks very bright yellow, I'm not a fan. So I guess I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the color. I like when it looks dark, but I don't like when it looks bright yellow. Now, if you just look at this guitar and the electronics, you'll see that it is super simple. For example, the DGT SE has 3 controls and coil taps. The McCarthy has 4 knobs with coil taps. The hollow body has 2 outputs, a piezo bridge, and you get the point. The PRS SE line has a lot of versatility. But when you see the SE Santana, well, you just have a master volume and a master tone knob and a 3-way switch. There's no push-pulls, there's no hidden features. Nothing really jumps out at you. And to me, this is the perfect description of Carlos Santana and his significance in guitar history. And this is a little bit of a detour, but just follow me for a second. This is going to be interesting. So Santana, of course, played at Woodstock with all of the other guitar greats, and he was part of a lot of the important groups of the 70s and 80s. But as a millennial who grew up in the most diverse city in the United States, a ton of my friends actually knew who Carlos Santana was, and they certainly had no idea who Eric Clapton, Steve Vai, or Stevie Ray Vaughan was. And that's because in the late 90s and early 2000s, Carlos Santana had a string of singles that were super successful. They were everywhere on the radio, and I mean pop music radio. They had their own music videos on MTV and BET, and I was watching all of that even before I started to play the guitar. And I'll never forget that really cool scene in the Maria Maria video where Carlos Santana is playing his nylon string guitar and then he whips out his electric guitar to play the iconic lick of that song. That was fucking badass. And the thing about Carlos Santana is that he was the guitarist in these songs and he had other singers and other artists playing with him. But his name was the first on the list. In other words, as the guitarist, he had top billing. And if you listen back to those hit songs like Maria Maria or Smooth, you definitely can remember and sing those iconic guitar licks, and you even have a clear memory of his very smooth singing humbucker tone. And that's the underrated genius of Carlos Santana. He's one of the few guitarists from the prior generation that had bona fide pop music hits in the 2000s. And as a guitar player, he has an uncanny ability to play the exact lick at the exact perfect time. And these licks are simple and beautiful and memorable without any gimmicks or fat, so to speak. And to be completely honest, guys, I can't overstate how difficult it is to play things that are simple yet effective. I know in this modern era of guitar playing, it's all about playing a ton of crazy, complicated, and fast, tricky things, but I had a very difficult time trying to just make things simple and to the point with my little intro solo. In fact, I'll show you a few clips of the things that I originally played and how overly intricate they were. They just didn't fit over this style of music. So again, Carlos Santana's ability to do that is super, super impressive. And that is basically what this guitar is. It's simple, it's to the point, There's no fancy binding anywhere. There's no fancy push pulls and extra switches. It's exactly what it looks like, and it just works and sounds amazing. Also, guys, I'm finishing this video a couple of hours before it's supposed to come out with strep throat. If you appreciate the effort, please give the video a like. I'd really appreciate that. So I hope I don't end up saying this in every single review, but I can say so far, I think, these pickups are my favorite. And that's because they have a sound that to me is very transparent. I noticed that when I play these pickups through like a jazz chorus style amp, it gives me that pristine, clean thing that the amp wants to do, and it sounds good doing it. But then if I put on a little bit more of a drivey tone, it does that very smooth singing thing that you would want from that tone. So I find that these are almost like chameleon pickups. They kind of just take the character of the amp. See, the notes just have that character where they sing and just are warm and clear. They remind me a lot of the Carvin Allen Holdsworth pickups. When I played those pickups, I had a similar reaction to them. It makes you just want to play single notes and hear the character of the thing because it's just very pleasant, you know? Just a very pleasant sound. The DGT SE guitar I noticed has a lot of bass. So on all of my settings, I have to roll the bass back to kind of get it to a neutral position. With this guitar, with all the knobs at noon on any amp, it kind of just sounds exactly like how you would want that amp to sound. And I really, really like that about this guitar. Again, it goes back to the idea that this is just a simplicity thing and it just works for what you want it to work for. And there's also something that's liberating about having a very simple control layout and also about having the controls back and away from your right hand area. When I play all of my fancy layout controlled guitars and then pick this one up, it's kind of like when you come from a place where you had to wear a suit or a fancy dress, and then you get home, you strip down to your underwear, you can just sit on the edge of the bed for a little while and cool off. That's what it's like playing this guitar. It's just comfortable and honestly kind of relaxing. And then of course we have the PRS 6-screw tremolo. And guys, this is the only 6-screw design tremolo that I've ever really enjoyed. It's silky smooth, you can easily adjust the tightness of the arm with the set screw in the back, but out of box it's always exactly perfect for the way I like it. And you might know this about me, but I usually replace these bridges when I get them on a guitar. This is the only one from a brand of this price tier that I've never felt like I had to replace. I really love the way that this 6-screw bridge feels. Now, the one thing that I still prefer about a 2-point trem is that I like to set my action very low whenever I got a new guitar, and this guitar came out of the box set up very nicely, but the action was too high for me. And because of that, you have to adjust the individual saddles to adjust the height, which takes a bit longer than adjusting the global height with a 2-point trem design. But apart from a few quick adjustments, this guitar has been playing absolutely phenomenally well. So I'll just conclude with this. I have a few preferences when it comes to my main guitar. Now, yes, I love playing my archtops, I love my fixed bridge guitars, I love my gypsy jazz guitar, and so on. But when it comes to the main guitar, my main electric guitar that I like to use to try to create my own unique style of music, I need a floating bridge, I need humbucker pickups, I need a fat neck, and I need controls that are out of my way. So when it comes to the PRS SE line, if I had to pick just one guitar that I would play to get my unique style, even though I don't love this color, I would probably pick the SE Santana. Actually, maybe I should look into the core model because then I can get the exact color I want. Okay, no, we can't go down that rabbit hole. This is the SE experiment, not the core model experiment. Anyway, you're probably wondering how this guitar compares to the very popular DGT SE, which also has a floating bridge and 2 humbuckers. And we'll compare these 2 guitars coming up in the future, and make sure to leave any questions you have below. By the way, I'm Andre Flood. Courses and Patreon link below. I'll talk to you soon.